more background about Andrew. So he writes poetry, fiction, songs, and academic papers across many disciplines, published throughout Australia and internationally. Andrew was born in Brisbane and considers the 4101 postcode his spiritual home. He has resided in 3 Australian states, most recently moving in New South Wales from Magenta to Port Macquarie to Maxville and now into Mackay in North Queensland, immediately after this launch. Andrew collaborates musically with his wife, performing and recording as the Blood Moon Wailers. In addition to medical degrees and postgraduate qualifications in psychiatry and psychotherapy, he holds a master's degree in creative writing from the University of Queensland and a PhD from Griffith University. Overqualified in my opinion. Now I would also like to introduce you to Phil Brown, who will be in conversation with Andrew tonight. Phil is the arts editor of the Courier-Mail. In a career spanning 3 decades, he has written for the Gold Coast Bulletin, the National Times, Daily Sun, Sydney Morning Herald, South China Morning Post, Time, Griffith Review, and a string of other national and international newspapers, magazines, and journals. He's the author of 2 books of poetry, 2 humorous memoirs, Travels with My Angst, and Any Guru Will Do, both published by UQP. His most recent book is The Kowloon Kid, A Hong Kong Childhood, which was published by Transit Lounge in 2019. Please put your hands together for a warm welcome.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I have sent it to Betty. Oh,
Doing an event here, you know.
Okay, yeah, just one of my friends there is complaining that she hasn't got her link.
Oh, okay, well, that's important. Yeah.
It's the missing link.
Hello out there, everybody. Welcome, everybody. And, you know, it's great. Any other psychiatrists in the house?
Yes, there are.
Yeah, yes. Or see me later. I might need some assistance. I feel like I should be lying on a couch, really, but anyway.
It's more comfortable.
Yeah, that's right.
Until you feel really uncomfortable.
That's right. First of all, we're going to, and Andrew's going to set the scene by reading some poems, which is a good idea, I think. So we'll start off that way and then we'll have a chat.
Thanks, Phil. So this is the title poem for this collection, which actually took 16 years to get together. Probably because in the midst of it, I was doing a few other things like my day job, but also trying to write a novel, which has never been published anyway. Losing touch. We have left you to move out along the coast that divides this land of citizens from the Leviathan depths, where the whale's cry bounces and echoes down trenches, mourning its lost calf, and the tiger shark lusts for the board rider on her trajectory across the face between crest and trough, bloody dreams disrupted when both shark and surfer pull out before the breakers crash in over the rocks. As we proceed down the Pacific Highway, in our solitary vehicle packed with suitcases and the casket for my old guitar, the removalists travel separately. There are no floral tributes or cortege to follow us through scars of fire and flood, across the boundaries set by the Urban Weekend magazine. You may not recognise us when we rendezvous again at a Bohemian music festival or wine tasting at some limestone vineyard where you might see through us as phantoms thrown up by the kairos of sea spray that surrounds us, ethereally thin as we've become. Having lost the knot of tongues with which we once conversed on the pratfalls and the merits of contemporary cinema. Here's something a bit longer and lighter. It's the only poem that I ever got into a particular magazine. Great Notion Road. God is in heaven. The fish in the tank in the Thai restaurant, Exhibition Street, Melbourne, will never see stars fall. Neil Armstrong rocketed 250,000 miles to the moon, a long trip for a small step. A sign beyond Westgate Bridge marks our slow progress under the sun 1 kilometre from Ceres. Armstrong is dead. Let us debate who first saw the lighthouse come over the rise at Split Point, Wild horses of cloud ride the sky. Where the sun dips, I fell behind the retinue on that ridge above Fairhaven. I will look to the east for your return. From Erskine Falls to Teddy's Lookout, above the St. George River estuary, voices tumbling over stones, mouth cliches of beauty. The road is sinuous as the sigmoid colon, continuous to Apollo Bay. Ocean to port, land starboard, no Apollo splashdown. Not Armstrong, not Aldrin, nor Collins would pay to enter the lighthouse at Cape Otway, so they circle the bight in spiral orbit. There were 12 apostles, only 9 remain: Peter, Andrew, Mark, Matthew, Luke, Nathaniel, Judas, James, and John. Signal the astronauts over the bay. There aren't no astronauts, but the angels came down through a gap in the clouds just beyond the limestone pillars, an excellent home for birds. That fish in the tank knows nothing of wind farms, nor of sheep on the road to Mount Gambier. It may bang on the glass, but never will walk on the moon. The lighthouse at Roe is of modern design. 3 concrete slabs with a globe in a cyclone and barbed wire enclosure. The fiberglass lobster claws at the sky from the roadside cafe at Kingston, the first crustacean beyond Point Fairy. When the fish left its tank, Armstrong rose up and the crayfish broke free from its moorings. They tyrannised sheep by the salt pans of Coorong. Armstrong to Aldrin: Buzz, on the moon, there were no wind farms, no lighthouses, no fiberglass crayfish. Desolate, says Aldrin. Across the causeway on Victor Harbour, we walk by moonlight around Granite Island. I was alone when I saw the rainbow. As the ferry docks at Pennyshore, a fur seal licks its whiskers. Silver cars slip down the ramp like pilchards. From Kingscote to Seal Bay, red earth and grey-green scrub, divided by tarmac from fields of canola. On the Ironstone Road to the Marron Cafe, there are no fiberglass crayfish. The marron in the tanks go well with Chardonnay. If God was an astronaut, what would she say to the Cape de Coodic seals at play in the cove, and all the marsupials killed on the road back to Kingscote at dusk? Wallabies burst out of the scrub, bound back and forth in the path of the car, into the scrub again. The road from the Cape Jervis ferry branches left to Adelaide, sinuous along the valley to Yankalilla Bay. On the Florio, ghost gums and lavender farms, roan Angus beasts and black-faced lambs all toast on the way under the sun. On long hauls through space, do astronauts dream of summer love or crayfish with fiberglass claws? Ask the fish in the tank. Armstrong is silent. And this one, in a longer form, was shortlisted in the Gwen Harwood poetry competition about 14 years ago. Watching the bridge. A smudge on the line between bridge and sky. Another semi-trailer thunders. Light breaks the storm. Each end of the bridge is the start of a rainbow. No one looks at the hill where the dead lie in the midfield of vision. Swaying eucalypts whisper names raised from stones in the garden of imminence. Lorikeets fight a single finch over nectar in the stellate flowers of the umbrella. This humid afternoon sheds its musty kimono. I stand and shiver in my black Speedos, inspecting bonsai in a tub of pebbles. It has rained on the crush of lilies sprayed with citronella. A puddle dries, exposing fossil ferns. Evolution slows during peak hour. In a storm, when I am gone, another semi-trailer thunders. No shag on the hunt, nor squid's eye in the bay could capture this on film. And this one was shortlisted in the International Brit Forward Prize, also a long time ago. Yeah, I have a friend in the UK who won the Brit Forward Prize, but he's not me. Yeah. He's Mario Petrucci. Mother of Pearl, when you left the beach to tend the threat of your father's failing heart, I walked the twins to Gelatissimo. A blonde girl without growth, the colour of her boxer's coat, left the dog tied to a pole while she sought hazelnut and pistachio. Once served, she bent so low the dog licked cream from her cheeks, and the jagged hem of her denim skirt tore my chest apart. The little girls chose lemon and maroon confectionery in cups before we crossed the road to the tidal pools, where mother plunged as a lamina of chrome into the helix. Here's something that I wrote soon after Linda and I started seeing each other. We both got spectacles that week, I think, or something like that. This is the lyric to a song that I wrote. We've recorded as Blood Moon Whalers, but it's about a night just after being out up the road here, listening to Lead Belly, home from the boundary after the Delta Crows, turning on Lead Belly on the Rock Island line at 20 to midnight. I'm praying to snatch fragments of meaning to ride into the light that Leadbelly saw flash across the cell wall, with freedom the hope of sharing a boxcar, crossing the boundaries with easy kisses, bridging the distance of a walk in silence, chewing cracked corn covered in cotton balls. From head to toe, we ride into the light that Leadbelly saw flash across the cell wall, with freedom the hope of sharing a boxcar. I'm humming and strumming from treble to bass on an old guitar in a place that knows love, no love no more. Oh Lordy, Lord knows, who knows what love is. Right into the light that Leadbelly saw flash across the cell wall, with freedom the hope of sharing a boxcar. But Lord, I know, Leadbelly tells me one thing I know. I'm listening, Leadbelly. You tell me sweet kisses break across the rhythm of chain gang hammers, bashing to shatter this fragile belly of love. This one's the second ever poem that I ever got in the Weekend Australian, and they were 25 years apart. I haven't submitted many to the Weekend Australian. This one got in, I think about 2 years ago, yeah. Where oil drums go to die. In the land where all oil drums go to die, lived jazz cornetist Papa Mutt Carey, who raised his horn and blew, "Get out of here and go on home," waking memories of 1944 and a Creole band with trombone man Kid Ory. The drums, some stacked in lines, some sprawling on the grass, beat back a Melanesian story of past lives served as makeshift rafts, bearing soldiers in jungle greens, drifting in the Coral Sea without a radio, praying for the Navy as the storms rolled in. One, two more.
Yeah, two more.
Yeah, two more. Okay.
Less word from me.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's think. Yeah. Okay. Magenta Shores. Now, Linda and I lived for nearly 2 years at a place called Magenta, just north of the entrance on the central coast of New South Wales. Magenta Shores. In this pale twilight, we pass the beach houses where retirees go to rest on Banksia-lined streets of white architectural uniformity. We brood as querulous misfits in false community, dreaming of an urban village where the residents, drunk with poetry, jam raucously on vintage instruments. I push against a hedge to let an old man in a golf cart overtake us in the dusk. On the verge of the putting green, where managers and keepers laid poisoned baits for rabbits. On the edge of the resort, we amble along the track over the dunes to Tuggerah Beach. We walk the line between foam and sand, where kelp washes up as waves break, then dump their load of silica on the steep shelf. In the afterglow that follows sunset over the lake, night stumbles and falls until the moon rises, then disappears behind a cloud. Let's rest for a moment, you say. I lower myself onto the sand while you photograph the moon's demise. I feel it in my joints. I seek your assistance to rise. This last one's also a song lyric, jazz showing the vines, a song lyric of the Blood Moon Wireless. Linda sings this beautifully. Yeah, I scratch away on the guitar. Yeah. Do use a few jazz chords. Jazz showing the vines. We left home from Magenta, up through Nora Head, driving through a black spot, lost the internet. My thought train slid as Coltrane dropped from Spotify, down the sax keys of my mind, longing for my children at the jazz show in the vines. Children are the blue notes in the pentatonic line, as we leave the pier and pelicans at Budgie Boy behind. They ride the engine's murmur as we pass by Morissette, saddening the timbre of the mortal instrument that strains towards revival at the jazz show in the vines. There's heart sink on the highway, crossing double lines, dodging all the roadkill, traffic cops and fines. We pull into the Caltex to refuel and refresh. Fresh coffee and the love will bring us both to the jazz show in the vines. Pushing on through Cessnock, Fibro shacks and wines, take a left turn through Colvin, following the signs. There'll be bubbles on arrival, brass arpeggios, a chanteuse on the main stage, Chatelaine by my side, proclaiming our arrival at the jazz show in the vines.
Cessnock, I know. I love some of the places in there because you mentioned my hometown, Maitland, in one of the poems. So I'm intrigued with this Blood Moon Wailers. I haven't heard the Blood. Is this anything like Bob Marley and the Wailers? I'm a bit of a reggae fan. But, no.
I do cover one Bob Marley song.
Oh, do you? Or
not
which one?
No Woman No Cry.
Oh, yeah, well, no, who does? I'm a reggae fan, so any band that's got wailers involved, I'm there. So. And obviously, music's very important to you, and there's lots of musical references in there. How many of these poems are actually songs as well?
Just those two. Just
Okay.
those two.
Yeah.
But we recorded an album of 8 songs. That.
Oh, have you? Okay.
Yeah. And Linda wrote the lyrics to one of them,
Right.
and I wrote the rest. Yeah.
I don't want to get too personal, but how long have you guys been together?
5 years.
5 years. I'm asking this because I do see these guys on Facebook, and I know you have a close relationship, and it's quite sweet, and you perform together, and I was thinking about a song, Neil Young, A Man Needs a Maid, and I thought, no, I thought a man needs a muse, and
Yes.
man can be put in your own gender there, or non-gender if you like, but it seems to me that Linda kind of is your muse, and yes, Linda?
Yeah.
And in fact,
we could both use a mate though.
that's right. I do love Harvest. It's a great album.
Yes.
And of course you can see Linda on the then I thought of Procol Harum, because this is the face at first just ghostly. It's a ghostly image. So tell me about the image on the cover, because
Yeah, it was an accidental photograph. I was trying to take a photograph of Linda through the window of what is supposed to be the oldest coffee shop in the world on the high street of Oxford. Now, there's another coffee shop on the opposite side
That claims also
the same honour. But look, I just must have caught the reflection. And so you get the ghost of Linda through the window, but you also get the reflection of the bicycle and the bag of rubbish. So, yeah.
What were you doing in Oxford?
I was at, I think we were at the International Violent Federation Congress.
The who?
Violent, as in Michael Violent and Enid Violent, the psychoanalysts who invented the violent method of clinical reflection. So it's
I haven't tried that.
yeah, you probably you'd enjoy it. Yes. Yeah. No, I try to go to the International Violent Federation Congress whenever I can. I've presented there several times, and again this year in Brussels in August.
Oh,
yeah.
What's the name of the oldest coffee shop in the world there?
I can't remember, but it's they
There usually is a rival.
yeah.
Have you heard of the Bakewell pudding?
I've heard of a Bakewell.
It's a famous Bakewell tart, Bakewell pudding. There are 2 shops in Bakewell where we visited, claiming to be the home of the Bakewell tart.
Bakewell tart, yes.
Fierce. There's been sort of European sort of court cases about it.
They talk about a man named Solomon who bought the coffee bean there, and whichever side Mr. Solomon had his shop, that's hotly debated.
There are, I do like the travels in the book. There are some travels there, and some of them are familiar. There's a poem about Ubud.
Yes.
And having, I don't know, everybody been to Ubud, or you know, it's a great little mountain town with a sort of centre of culture. And when did you go there, by the way?
Oh, the first time.
What's that poem? I need to refer to the poem.
The first time, yeah, that one was written 15 years later.
Yeah, Alila Fever, Ubud.
Yeah, that was in the same place. There was those 2 poems. There was one in the second collection. It was this one, and that one was really towards the end of my second very long marriage. Yeah.
The second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get too personal, but I'm interested. I am interested in this stuff.
Yeah, like so.
Yeah.
We broke up shortly after that second trip to that place.
And how long between the breakup and you and Linda moving up? Sorry, I mean,
A couple of years.
decent interval anyway.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I like to know these things.
Yes.
Tell me, and there's another lovely poem in there set in Nepal.
Yes.
And I've had the pleasure of trekking in Nepal. It was the first trip I went on with my wife just before we got married. And I figured if we got through that, we should be all right. I didn't so much as trek, I trudged. But just tell me about your journey in Nepal. Has anybody been to Nepal, by the way? Because it's life-changing, it really is.
Yeah, well, that was also the second time in Nepal, but 27 years apart. And that was written about experience on the Everest Base Camp.
And you mentioned Khumbu, is that that's a glacier,
Khumbu,
right?
Khumbu Valley is the valley that leads up to Everest.
And there's a
Khumbu
glacier. Yeah.
Yeah, that glacier on which all those Sherpas died is the top of it.
So how far up did you
glacier.
get to Everest Base Camp? Or?
Yeah, just beyond and onto a ridge on the Murray called Kalapatar,
Right.
at about 5,550 metres.
It's otherworldly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
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 But it's lovely to travel with you through the poems, and
Yeah.
and so and to see familiar places, and you've had a sort of relatively peripatetic sort of existence, and because of your professional life. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've spent most of my life in Brisbane, but grew up in Toowoomba. But I was in private practice here for about about 4 years in public practice. I was in practice here in Brisbane for about 21 years, but until the last 4, I spent 4 years during my psychiatry training in Tasmania spent 4 years in New South Wales. Yeah, various places briefly at the hospital at Penrith, and then also relatively briefly for about 3 months at Lismore, when at the time when they were just reeling from the 2017 floods.
Oh my God.
And then 2 years at Wyong, and the last 2 years have been between Port Macquarie, Kempsey, and Clubs Harbour.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of there's
Maxville, in
Maxville.
between, living in Maxville, halfway between.
And Wyong is kind of like, is that near Gosford or somewhere?
Wyong's north of Gosford.
North of Gosford,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a very interesting place. I don't know why they didn't put the hospital at the railway station.
Yeah.
It's a very very needy community, and I remember, unfortunately, my main memory of Wyong was having to sedate some very angry methamphetamine users every day on the locked ward there at Courier-Mail Hospital.
So you're in your life as a psychiatrist. What's your specialty?
Well, I trained as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, and most in private practice I was doing mostly psychotherapy. One of the things, though these days I work predominantly as an administrative psychiatrist. I'm going up to be clinical director of mental health, alcohol, and other drugs for Mackay area, which will be interesting because I haven't been in Mackay for 35 years. I was country leading medical officer.
I think it's pretty well the same.
No, it's 3 times as large, 3 times as large, and much more important. Lots of sugar cane, though, and lots of cane toads, but also the largest South Sea Island community in Australia.
Of course,
Because unfortunately the town's named after John Mackay, who was one of 2 very successful and notoriously successful slave traders.
Well, in the same way that Townsville's named after Robert Towns, another. So tell me, have you been to Mackay? Like you went up there to suss it out.
No, I haven't been there for 35 years.
Linda, what do you think about this?
Look, I'm just so happy with that.
Yeah. Oh, good on you.
Yeah.
I got
That's the spirit.
there's a couple of school friends who live close to Mackay.
Yeah.
And we've got one of my old school friends here tonight, Greg, down back there.
Oh, I started my career in Rocky, so I like that part of the world. There was a big South Sea Islander community in Rocky as well.
Yes.
I got to know the Mabel Edmund. I don't know if you know heard of Mabel. Yes, Mabel was I got to know quite well. She was a famous sort of leader of that community, and it's very interesting. But it's a nice part of the world, except for the drive between Rocky and Mackay. It's not very distant.
Yes. The Marlborough stretch.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I was a young reporter, there was always accidents on the Marlborough stretch
And serial killers.
yeah, and I used, yes, that's right, yes. No, you wouldn't drive there, and on the 2 to 10 shift, you'd have to ring around to the senior sergeant, and he said, "There's been an accident on the Marlborough stretch," and so you call out to the chief sub-editor, "There's an accident on the Marlborough stretch," and the chief sub-editor's eyes light up, and he says, "Is it fatal?" And you go, "Is it fatal?" No. And the chief sub-editor goes, "Damn." It's newspapers for you.
It's a bit like Andy Krell's The Shipping News. I remember he gets to do the car crashes and the shipping news.
Yeah,
That's right. The car crashes are exciting.
that's right. Tell me, so there are some poets who, we're in the medical profession.
Yes.
I guess most famously William Carlos Williams.
Indeed.
Yeah. Are you a fan of William Carlos Williams?
Yes, very much so, especially of Patterson, the long poem Patterson. The one where it's largely it's prose poetry in this verse.
Yeah. Are you aware of this tradition of medico writers? I think Conan Doyle, for example, was
Yes.
not a poet, but and apparently, so Keats studied medicine.
Did he? Yeah.
Well, there you go. I only found that out today when I was Googling any other, are there any other psychiatrist poets, do you know?
Jennifer Maiden's probably
Oh, for God's sake. There you go.
or is it Jennifer Harrison? Whichever one of them is probably the best known
I
Australian.
mean, to write poetry, you do
psychiatrist.
need to have your head read. So,
Yeah. We've got another psychiatrist writer here tonight, actually,
where is
Warren
this?
Ward, who's
Is this
Warren's
one here?
here, and Warren
Yeah.
has recently published a wonderful non-fiction book on the love lives of the philosophers, which has become a
my God.
bestseller. So I'm just really so pleased to see that.
Who published that?
UK.
Oh, well, that sounds promising. All above board, I hope.
And Nick Earl started training in psychiatry. Yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah,
I knew he
it's
was
so
doing medicine. I didn't know.
couple of the characters in his novels are very transparently two of our colleagues.
There
Yeah,
are some poems in the book related to your work.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of because some people think you might want to keep that out of your work, but obviously it has to find its way into your work at some stage.
I remember, for example, in the first collection, there was a poem called A Day at the Derwent. Now, I was punished when I passed my college psychiatry exams, and actually Warren was one of the people that led us around for the psychiatry exams. I passed them in the minimum time, in just 3.5 years. And I was rude enough to the Tasmanians who'd been hosting me to train me to tell them I wanted to go back to Queensland at the end of that year. So they punished me by sending me up to work at the Royal Derwent, the loony bin up the river that had been founded as a sort of occupational therapy for occupational rehabilitation.
Is this in the Derwent Valley?
Yeah,
Near what town?
New Norfolk. Yeah,
Oh, that
Yeah.
place.
yeah,
That's now a restaurant.
yeah, indeed. It's a very good
A
restaurant.
very good restaurant.
But it was a very horrible Gothic psychiatric hospital.
I know it. Yeah,
And,
I've been to New Norfolk.
Yeah, so A Day at the Derwent was, I wrote it in the Norfolk accent. Now, the Norfolk accent is, it's got lines like the nurse saying to me, keep your instrument in your pocket. And
Oh.
there's the accent, the accent comes from Norfolk Island because
Oh,
they
right,
set that hospital up.
Yeah.
Set that hospital up and settled the jailers' families there. And they then ran the Royal Derwent for over a century, like a jail,
Yeah.
like a 19th century jail.
I speak some Norfolk, by the way.
Yeah,
What away you?
yeah,
There you go. That's how you say, how are you in
yes,
Norfolk?
yeah. Well, they talk pretty much like that.
I spent a year on Norfolk 1 week.
Yes, yeah. I took all my sick leave during the 6 months I was at the Royal Derwent.
We went to New Norfolk. I thought because of the the agrarian restaurant or something that's there now, using the old facilities, and we went to New Norfolk thinking it was like a kind of noosa in the country, or no, it's not. And we went to New Norfolk on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. It's closed. New Norfolk was closed. They only sort of open on Thursdays and the weekends. It's very pretty.
The inn there used to do really wonderful rainbow trout.
So tell me, so it's 16 years between books, you said?
This time, yes.
Yeah. What took you?
Oh, look, I mean, it's the day job.
Yeah.
The day job plus plus trying to write the novel.
What happened to the novel?
Well, it's still sitting there. I mean, it was the main creative part of my PhD thesis.
Oh, okay.
And I managed to publish some papers out of the exegesis.
Right.
But still haven't got a publisher for the novel. And it keeps getting shrunk down more and more. It's shrinking.
What can we say the novel's about?
The novel is called In Dreams, and it's a story of a behavioural neurologist who and his nemesis, who is his patient, who is a man named Nick, who is the bass player for a grunge band called Return of the Evil
Sounds promising.
Yeah, it's got some gruesome scenes in it.
Yeah. Must have been cathartic. Tell me, I mean, is it, you know, that your work, is it traumatic?
Sometimes, yes, yeah, and I think it's really important for people working in psychiatry and in mental health, I think, to learn how to tune out from traumatizing stuff, and some of the stuff that you see and experience does stick to you.
Yeah.
I did and Linda also did this training with a very wonderful American trauma therapist called Yvette Rothschild, who concentrated a lot in her workshops on how to help health professionals to not soak up the trauma. In fact, actually turning down the empathy dial was one of the things that she advocated. I think, you know, we all are taught to how to. Well, I don't know that you can teach how to be empathic, but many health professionals, and especially mental health professionals, have a tendency to be, you know, go into it because they want to help people, and often they can get too involved in it.
Yeah, of course.
And being able to disconnect from it's really important. Poetry and music help me.
I was going to say, poetry and music is your therapy, obviously. Yeah. So yeah, because there's quite a lot of music references in there, and they're all sort of music references that an old fart like me gets, like Leonard Cohen and et cetera, and Mingus and Coltrane, etc. So with your music, so do you and Linda perform live at times, and how often and where?
Oh, look, you know, we're really big time. You know, I got we got $50 once for being best in the open mic at the entrance RSL one night, and I haven't been there. I have been paid a beer and a burger down the road here at one stage on 2 occasions for doing a half-hour set of original songs. So we're really big time. And on Spotify, on TuneCore, which is a sort of music distribution site, in the last 18 months, I have made $1.53 for the distribution of our songs.
Okay,
That's big time.
That's a start.
Yeah. No, we're performing open mics and little slots in.
So you play guitar?
I play guitar and bass, and also more recently blues harmonica,
Oh,
and sing too. But
cool.
Linda plays the tenor ukulele and sings beautifully. But Linda's the one who's really at the professional level.
I kind of hope we might get a bit of, anyway, never mind. I do love the blues, and one of the things when I was flicking through the book when I first got it, I just loved to see a poem about lead belly.
Yeah.
Because I sort of grew up on lead belly, and do you know the song Bourgeois Blues?
Yep. Yeah.
Yes. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, as you intimate in the poem / song, Leadbelly was in jail at one stage.
Yeah, he had a very tragic life.
Yeah.
He had a very tragic life. He killed his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shot her.
Yeah.
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 Did he get out of jail? I can't remember.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. He spent quite a bit of time away, and that's the midnight special is written on the basis that the midnight special would come along, and they'd just see this flash of light across the cell wall as the midnight special rolled past, and that's where the song Midnight Special comes from.
Yeah, I had a double album of Lead Belly that I got saturated in when I was about 20, and it had you know, Good Night Irene and all sorts of songs
Yes.
on there. It's just fantastic. That was before I segued into reggae. That's another story.
Yeah.
Tell me, so I'm always, as a poet myself, I'm always intrigued by how people go about their poetry. I'm also been reflecting in recent times about poetry as something that can really build resilience in a person. Now, I think playing cricket really builds resilience, and my son's played cricket, and we've suffered through that whole experience with him. It can be the agony and the ecstasy if you're a cricket fan. But I wrote a piece saying that I think poetry builds resilience, because I started writing poetry when I was 18, and I could wallpaper my room with the rejection slips.
Yes.
Because it's a funny old thing, poetry, isn't it? Because no matter what level you're at, you can still get rejected. And you intimated, you know, you had a couple in the Australian, and I've been rejected by the Australian 3 times so far recently. You know what I do? I just keep sending them in. So how do you deal with that? And I'm assuming you still get rejected occasionally.
Oh, very often. Yes, very often. In fact, we took a long spell in the early years writing this book, where scarcely get anything published.
Yeah.
And
Yet you keep going.
yeah, there was a 18-month or so span around about 93, 94, 95, when I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Gwen Harwood, who heard me read 2 poems at a FAW meeting of old ladies in Hobart. Most of them were horrified by what I wrote. And Gwen stood up and fiercely said one of the things I wrote was absolute rubbish, and the other one was brilliant. I said, I must send it to Les Murray at Quadrant. And so I did, and immediately Les published it. Around about that time,
They publish a lot of poetry, Quadrant. I'll
Yeah.
give them that
Yeah.
much.
and you know, Les' politics and mine are very different, but you know, he's a very, very fine poet and brilliant editor. I remember having Les read at Metro Arts and Bruce Dorr too, when I was readings coordinator there for Queensland Poets back in the mid-90s. And that was around about the time when almost anything I sent anywhere got published.
Yeah.
And then it never happened again. It's sort of like few and far between ever since. So I think I must have fitted in a slot around about 94, 95, and ever since then I've had fit more.
Well, Bruce Dorr was a close friend and mentor of mine, because I was a student, but Bruce was telling me once when he was Bruce Dorr famous, some guys who had a new magazine in Melbourne contacted Bruce and said, "Could you send us a couple of poems to publish?" You know, so Bruce sent them a couple of poems and they rejected them. Hello, Bruce Dorr. This is poetry. What age were you when you started writing poetry?
About 15. Yeah, my first published poem was published in the Toowoomba Chronicle when I was 15.
Love poem?
No,
No.
it wasn't. It was something about mist at night or something.
Oh, that's Toowoomba, yeah. I went to uni in Toowoomba.
Yeah, certainly it's a good place for gothic misty stories, particularly if you hang out around the Toowoomba and Derwent Cemetery.
Oh yeah, I know all those places. We got drunk at the Drayton pub once and drove back up the hill to the Institute, and my friends VW had rolled it.
Yeah.
And we were inebriated, and they came rushing out of Davis College, if you know where that is.
Yes.
And they bought it. Somebody had a bottle of Double Hague. Said, "Here, have some of this." We were already pissed. Terrible, isn't it?
Well, I was thrown out of the Toowoomba and Drayton Cemetery.
Congratulations.
On closing time at Halloween. Because I was just standing under the jacaranda tree, staring down at my father's grave, because my mother was going to join him the next day. And I explained this to the security guard, and he let me off lightly. Then he said, "So Mum's going down there tomorrow." He was 80, Dad.
Right.
And when we buried him, you get down to 6 feet, And there's
He
this.
was dead, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, he was very dead. And there was this line of slime around about 6 feet down, and looking down the hole, saying bye to Dad. There's this line of green stuff, and it was the 108-year-old man on the other side of him seeping out of the rocks.
What is this, Edgar Allan Poe? I recall, do you know Kabbalah? Do you know where Kabbalah is?
Yes.
I recall being at a party at Kabbalah and smoking certain herbal cigarettes and wandering out into the fog, and half of us got lost in the fog. And that's Toowoomba for you.
Yeah.
I noticed that we've sort of come to the time for questions, haven't we?
Yeah, we can jump to questions.
As they say, the time has just flown by.
Do we have any questions from the audience tonight? Or
I'm sure we must.
And has there been thematic development over the various decades that have known?
Good question.
Yes. Yeah, there would have been. I think the emphasis on the musicality has grown, particularly as this collection is progressing. And like, you know,
That is a threat, isn't it?
yeah, I probably, I played a little bit of guitar in school. I badly played the viola in the school orchestra, having started far too late. And Greg was in the orchestra. Greg's actually quite a decent violinist. And certainly was then.
There you go.
But my viola, I can remember scratching out Faith of Our Fathers and barely sounding like anything. But
Speaking of music, you don't have your blues harp on you, do you?
no,
Oh, damn. Okay.
I've got 5 because I'm just not at a level where I can just switch keys on the same. You know, I can sort of manage a song in G on a C, and that's as far as I get. But
I did buy one once during my blues period, and I wrote a song about a coal train and made the coal train sound. That's about as far as I got. I do love the blues stuff.
you know, I managed to make it wail.
Oh, there you go. Hence the Blood Moon Whalers.
Yes.
Let's see these Blood Moon. Are you doing a gig in Brisbane while you're here? The Blood Moon Whalers?
Well, and on
Playing the Loft or something?
No, last Tuesday night at the Bug, we did a couple of songs.
Oh, cool.
Bugs, Brisbane Unplugged.
Right.
Yeah, I think both Ross and Tony were there. We just did a couple of songs in the open section.
We're not going to see you down the mall or anything.
No, not this time. I'll probably make more money than I do from the tune chord over here, more than the $1.53. You only have to get $1 coin to exceed that.
There you go.
Actually, I made more money from poetry last year because I did sell one for a.
Make money from poetry.
Yeah.
I always say there's no money in poetry. It's like virtue. It's its own reward, right?
Yes, yeah.
Sir.
Oh, Andrew, I had a question. Talk about music and the relation with poetry, and I know you're a psychotherapist, so you're listening to people's voices, but I was thinking of painting and landscape when I was doing one of those poems. So if you're interested in visual art in any way in theme based.
Oh yes. I mean, I don't draw or paint. But I've got one very scary mask that I made that still hangs on the wall. Made it actually during doing an art therapy group with some patients that I was working with a long time ago. And one of the participants in the group was a visual artist. And he more or less kind of took over the technique side of it and taught all the other participants technique. At the end of the group, I said, does anybody want to continue this group? No, only him. So we did individual art therapy for about 7 years, and he suffered with schizophrenia, and he made a massive improvement over that 7-year period. His mother was an art therapist herself, and she was pestering me all the time to try and do therapy with her son. And I said, I can't do therapy with him. We sit there for 15 minutes. He says 3 words. I ask him whether or not he sleeps. Is his medication too much? And I get a nod and a grunt. That's about it. But once we started doing visual art work together, and my participation in it was minimal, just really facilitating. He just took off, and he managed to finish his fine arts degree, and since has managed to marry and raise a son. Yeah, and he's doing all right, actually. I know he's still doing all right because we stay in touch. I treated him for about 20 years. But 7 years of that was once weekly art therapy. No, but my own stuff, I'm very interested in cinema, and my the exegesis of my PhD thesis was on In Dreams, a novel, and its exegesis, the place of dreams in the cinematic work of David Lynch. So I'm quite a big David Lynch fan. But
Did you go to his exhibition when he had an exhibition here?
Yes. Yeah.
I happened to meet David Lynch.
Did you?
Yeah. Which was quite something.
David Lynch met a psychiatrist once and said, should I do therapy? And then he said, well, can you guarantee that therapy won't destroy my creativity? And he said, no, I can't guarantee that. So I said, oh, I'm not doing it. So Lynch is really,
He does
very,
TM.
yeah, and very anti or post psychoanalytic. Yeah,
And he smokes a lot.
yes.
He insists on he was always going outside to smoke while he was.
And he makes really weird music these days.
He had his muse at the time, his various muses. He had his muse performing here.
Yeah.
A woman called Christabel. Have you heard of her?
I've heard of her,
Yeah.
but also
She sings like a siren.
yes, yeah.
Not an ambulance siren.
Although on David Lynch's first artwork, the one that actually got him into art college, was a sculpted artwork with these sculpted faces and projected images onto those faces with a wailing siren, and one of the faces was vomiting. It was called Two Heads Getting Sick.
I mean, I saw a race ahead, and that man does need help.
Yeah. Well, you see, before he made racing, yeah, it's that thing got him out of into college. Yeah, got him a scholarship.
One of the other sort of recurring motifs is the sea,
Yes.
coast, the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've lived in places.
Yeah.
And as a surfer, I'm 2 years, in remittance from surfing, but I've surfed up until the last 2 years ago. Yes, the bit about the shark is very
Yes.
familiar, and I'm sort of glad I'm not out there anymore because there seem to be more shark attacks in the last couple of years.
Yeah, there have been.
But yeah, the coast is, I don't know, is it a tonic for you? Is it a...
It's running on the beach, actually. I'm running for a long time, whenever I could, I would run on the beach. It's sort of that line in between.
You've got clothes on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Usually. Yes. I tend to take them off after the run. I'm shooting.
yeah, but there are some beautiful images of
Yes.
coastal places, and you mentioned by name some of them. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and these last 4 years we've lived. I think probably one of the things that's kept me. I wouldn't exactly say kept me sane, but it helped me to be saner than I otherwise would be. Is being able to, particularly when we were living in Magenta, to be able to go and run a long run on Tuggerah Beach at the end of the day.
Magenta, that's a nice name for a town, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, now there's going to be a whole suite of Mackay poems, right?
Could well be.
I'll be interested to see what you come up with.
It's bound to have a lot to do with cane toads.
Do we have any more questions? We might have time for one more.
One more?
Yes.
Do you work with Indigenous people? Do
Yes.
you get inspiration from their stories? And
Yes.
Does it give you some sort of inspiration or their
Yes.
life and their story, especially they're from this land?
Yes.
How does it affect your story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Spirit and all that?
That's a big one. Now, my nieces, my half brother's daughters, Aboriginal girls, women. One of them's a telecommunications executive in Phnom Penh, with a
Camilla Roy?
yeah. Her mother was Camilla Roy.
I noticed a mention here.
Her mother was Camilla Roy. Yeah, and my half brother David and Robin got married when David was 18 and Robin was 17 because Sharon was born. Sharon Gray, who's she's an elder in one of the Sydney communities now. She's she's a senior executive in construction, in employment work in construction. But her daughter Nina is Clive Watson's daughter, who's Clive's Udrew's grandnephew. So she's a new knuckle.
Related to Samuel?
Yes,
Right.
yeah. Clive's Sam's first cousin.
Right.
So Nina's just a couple of years ago graduated from Macquarie University, and Nina, she published an article on. She's a journalist now. She's published an article on taking the possession, ownership of the land by the Aboriginal people back not 60 or 80,000 years, but 120, and presenting the evidence for that, some of the archaeological evidence for that. But also, look, while I was particularly at Kempsey, I was working a lot with, Kempsey, about 13% population are Aboriginal people, and I was trying very hard to support the beginnings of the Aboriginal Mental Health Service, and with they only had 3. There was one psychologist who was a director, and 2 other workers. Worked as much closely supporting them as could. Sadly, treating a lot of young Aboriginal people with drug-induced psychosis, and also a huge number of those that are coming out of the jail. And there was Kempsey had epidemic of youth suicide just a couple of years before I came there. This was always a shadow trying to prevent the suicide, and for the getting out of Kempsey was probably the most difficult thing. Kempsey was. I loved working at Kempsey. Actually, it was the best part of my work on the Central Coast. But for young people growing up there, it's important to live in Kempsey if they can. Beck, who was the director of the Aboriginal Mental Health Service, Beck would, I'd try to say, this is our country. And she'd say, no, it's not your country. Say, well, what country do I have if this is not my country? Just to have the sense, though, of an us and being on country, I think it's very difficult for the European here in this country. Like my European ancestors on my father's side didn't come here till 1912, but my mother's side have had ancestors in this country since 1830, both two ancestors from 1831, a convict and another free settler who's buried somewhere at Maitland.
Oh, right.
And in fact, I think
That's
brother of my great grandfather was hanged at Patterson, and may well be in that very, very old cemetery at Maitland, because that's where they disposed of the convicts.
I think Les Darcy's buried there, isn't it? The boxer?
Yes. And Greenaway, the architect.
There you go.
Yeah. He died of cholera. He was sent here for forgery. Yeah. He designed all those wonderful buildings like Treasury Building in Sydney. Yeah.
There you go. Now I think we've come to the end of this time, and then you're going to be signing some books inside.
Yes.
And a few further chats as we go. So we could go on for another hour. We're not allowed to. So
You're not allowed, right? Just past 7:30 now. If you could all put your hands together for Andrew. I mentioned we have copies of Losing Touch up at the counter where you can get yours, and then we'll have Andrew inside and you can get your copy signed.
Thank you, and thanks to the other reader for having me launch the book here, and thanks very much to Phil for his work on this, and also to Phil and to Rosanna for their blurbs on the back cover. I think Phil did a blurb on the back cover of my first book too, so I have to thank you for that as well.
So I've got an invoice prepared for you.
Thanks.
Next performance.
Thanks for coming.
Right.